just before I ask the question, I think that the issue that you get at, Philip Hunt, is the nub of it. You've got a fixed budget and you want to spend it, in your words, effectively. And the difficulty that you have is that you equate effective with delivering more outputs. And the problem that you have is that if you're spending less and less per output, you're getting a lower quality service, and that is not getting you value for money, spending money on poor advice. And so my question stemming from that is this: most taxpayers are excluded from legal aid by means testing. As a result, politicians have little to gain by reversing the ongoing decline in the quality of legal aid services. Has the time come for an effective, independent champion for the interests of legal aid users at the heart of the legal aid system to counteract politicians' cost-cutting instincts?
I thought it was the Young Legal Aid Lawyers Association. But yes, let's have a response to that. Yes, Brenda.
I think you're absolutely spot on. Because it's not a vote winner, then everybody thinks it can simply be brushed under the carpet. But the question is how to get that effective voice across. And certainly if, for example, there is anything such as the Disability Rights Commission, there ought to be some form of parallel, arguably, for legal aid, because at the end of the day, if you are not investing in the future, you have not got a high-quality service, you will have so many miscarriages of justice after 15 years from what is now these fixed fee form of changes. And the government's not taking a long-term view and perspective on those sorts of issues.
Do you not see Des as your champion?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, is the legislature adequately backing for legal aid?
I think we've got the response there, but obviously, changes can be made, but that there needs to be more emphasis on the fact that yes, this might not be a vote winner in the sense that when you look at, for example, criminal defence law, it might not be appetising for politicians, but you have to look at it within the entire social context and what's going to happen in the future if you are not funding and you are not investing in the system.
Des?
Well, sadly, I don't think your proposal will be effective. That's not to say that I disagree with what I think are your aims here. What I worry about is that unavowedly, or perhaps by mistake, we are moving in terms of legal aid to a service for poor people. And services for poor people become poor services. And the very, very important issue here is, I think, access to justice. And I go back to Maud's question a moment ago. I'd echo what June was saying. We do have one law for the rich and one for the poor, and that's getting worse. I'm sorry if there are people here who think Allsally hasn't done enough. We take very, very seriously that issue about access to justice, because it seems to me that that speaks to the values that all of us understood, all of us committed to when we chose to become a barrister or solicitor. And it seems to me it's that sense of value that binds us, whether you're sitting in Canary Wharf or one of the Magic Circle firms, or struggling to make ends meet in a legal aid practice.
Henry, you spoke of emails and letters, yes. But they're from practitioners. What about the clients? How often do you actually get constituents writing to you and saying, I'm denied?
The answer to that, John, is that most people don't need legal advice, but when they do need it, they do need it because their whole lives probably collapsed and everything is grim and desperate, and then they need advice, as they never ever needed it before, and that's when they need the right advice, and they need it from lawyers. And what I do find very concerning is that this document here that Gareth put together on access to justice, what price justice, you've got a number of key organisations like Shelter, the NSPCC, Mind, Child Poverty Action Groups, and Citizens Advice, who are all saying that there is now going to be a serious problem for a lot of vulnerable people in society in terms of getting access to justice. And I'm seeing it in my advice centre in my constituency, the local CAB, who've had their budget slashed. They're finding it. And I just feel that we have got to use all the pressure we can on MPs, because this government, for goodness sake, it needs all the help and friends it can get. And I would urge people to talk to your local MP, go to the local MP's advice centre, and ask the MP. I mean, but this document by the Select Committee, the Select Committee report, have come up with about 4 or 5 really positive suggestions which won't cost a vast amount of money. And there's one other point as well. I think that Philip is much more responsive than his predecessor Vera Baird, who, in my experience, I love doing panel discussions with Vera because after about 5 minutes she'd insulted everyone in the audience and the opposition had a free ride. Philip is charming and he's generous. And we do also have a new, we now have a new Secretary of State. Lord Chancellor in Jack Straw, who again, I think when he starts to focus away from prisons a bit and he looks at what's happening in legal aid, and when Philip tells him what people are saying on the ground, he is a fair-minded person. So, and I don't believe for one moment that this campaign is over, because I think that the consequences of what has been delivered by Carter and by the implementation, I think the consequences for some of the worst predictions are indeed coming to pass, and you guys need to keep up the pressure, and we need to really put pressure on as many MPs as possible, and the government, who knows, may well start to listen.
Philip,
I thank Henry. I've got to thank Henry for that. I think it was a compliment.
It certainly was.
And can I say, Vera does send her best regards to you. I think that it's a very interesting question about the championing of legal aid, and I think it's a good idea. There is no question. If I think about, I got in the job in the 8 or 9 months I've been in it, I've had many meetings, and they've virtually all been with legal organisations of one kind or another, including, I have to say, I actually have to run the aid of the Law Society. Certainly from my experience, they've not been backward in coming forward in terms of issues around legal aid. But you're right, the kind of the representations that have been made to me have been almost entirely by people running legal services in receipt of legal aid budget. And actually, I do agree. Actually, we Carolyn and I have common cause with you in wanting to see the legal aid championed. And there's no question about it that for the long term, all of us who are concerned with the long-term health of legal aid do, I think, want to work together to make sure that people recognise the value it plays in access to justice and a criminal justice system. I don't agree that by focusing resources on the people who most need it, that will lead to a poor service. Nor do I agree that in trying to get the incentives right to incentivise efficient performance, that in itself leads to poor performance. My experience in general in the public sector has been that the most efficient organisations are those that provide the best quality as well.